My name's Michael Beck. I am here at the Prosper Forum, and we are having a panel discussion on the qualities of leadership and modern leadership and things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis as leaders and some of the challenges that we face. And here with us, we have today John Tallichet with Specialty Restaurants. John, welcome to the show. We have Anthony Zaller with Zaller Law Group. We have Mr. Reggie Stolver from Henny. And we have Mr. Josh Halpern of Big Chicken and other enterprises as well. I know you'll do a lot more now than just Big Chicken. All the
Worthy brands.
worthy brands. Now I got that straight. So today like I said, we're here to talk about leadership principles, and some of the things that, that as business owners and people developing businesses, some of the things you guys go through on a regular basis. And a lot of that's around finding the right people, asking the right questions, and helping to find that right chemistry on your team to really make it pop, right? I think that's what it's all about. You agree, guys? Yeah. So, Anthony, why don't you start us off, and we'll get into some of the questions we have set up for you.
Yeah, great. And I want to take a step back. This is different than our normal webinar format here, and I really appreciate everybody joining the panel and giving their time from the Prosper Forum. But we're coming live from Amelia Island in Florida at the Prosper Forum. It's a gathering of executives at the C-suite level in the hospitality industry. Unlike any other conference that I've been to, and it's pretty unique, but everybody's attending, and we're on our second day today. Everybody just got in. Some people got in late last night, so I really appreciate you guys being on the panel and being here. But I wanted to start off with a question. I didn't really prep you guys about it much, but
those are always the best questions.
Actually, I told them before we went live. But Josh, you didn't hear this question. So we'll start with you since this is really live.
So I'm an Aries. I was born on a Tuesday. I'm probably not covered.
Favorite color?
Yeah.
Blue. Okay. You heard it here first.
So for me, I was thinking back on it. I get in the position sometimes now as I'm getting older where you're the leader. The question comes up and everybody looks to you to solve that question. And sometimes I'm looking around like, who's going to solve this really difficult issue? And everybody's staring at me. When did you realize, and this is for everybody, that you had to be a leader?
I mean, at the end of the day, leadership starts the minute one in your career, right? It's just the pressure on you to make the final call goes up as you climb the ladder, right? I have a lot of little dumb sayings. One of them is none of us are as dumb as all of us, right? And what I mean by that is at the end of the day, as a CEO, you can't be the leader that makes a decision in a vacuum, right? It's give me your input, share your expertise. At the end of the day, it will be my call. I will take the blame. We will all take the credit if we succeed. But I'll make the final call, but make sure I have every last input. Lead me towards that decision. Because if you're in the trenches, you understand the situation way better than I ever can. Right? That's how you work together as a team. So for the guy that didn't know the question, not a bad answer, right? All right.
Well, I will say that first and foremost, I am the oldest of 5 boys. So when you ask the question, when did I know that I was the leader? A lot of it goes back to early childhood for me, being that older child, having younger siblings look to you for guidance, direction, etc. And then that just carried over for me as I played high school and college basketball and became a officer in the military. So leadership for me, I know I was a leader when I was the one that was willing to take greater risk and have maybe a little more courage than some others and be willing to live with the result. If we won it all, lost it all, can I carry that burden in the same fashion? I started that at a very early age, so I would say that's when I noticed when people were looking to me for direction, for guidance, for answers, and I was willing to take that responsibility.
Can you remember, was there an instant that you can pop back? And probably pretty early that you always.
I would definitely say. And again, transparently, I got my brothers into a lot of trouble too. But clearly for me, I would go back to when I was about 14 years old and my mom, I was in a single home and I had to look out for my brothers, maybe cooking or making sure they did their homework or things like that. I almost became like a disciplinarian. So it was examples like that, being in the home, looking out for my brothers, making sure I had their back in the absence of my mom not being there and getting us through. All my brothers are doing phenomenally well today. So I would take it back. I would take it back to a very, very old age.
It sounds like when you're starting to pick up just that sense of responsibility for other people is what you said, right?
That's really it. And it's no greater burden in a very positive way than to have the responsibilities of other people, like a CEO, like a big brother, like the point guard on the basketball team or the quarterback on the football team. You're really carrying the load for everyone. That is a big responsibility.
Well, I think part of leadership is being someone worthy of follow, right? Like at the end of the day, we've all had bad bosses that had great titles at some point in our career, right? And we don't really consider those bad bosses to be leaders of our group. It's, well, that's the boss or that's the manager. And the differential piece is always, was this person worth following? And when you find those people that are worth following, a lot of people are willing to forgo the next promotion, forgo the salary increase to go somewhere else, forgo the opportunity in a different organization. Because when you find that leader that you want to follow, that's one of the most special things that you can ever find, whether it's in your family or whether it's in a company setting. If you were a worse big brother, you wouldn't have been able to lead the other four, right? If you're a bad boss, you're not going to be the sort of person people want to stay with.
John, what's your take on that?
I think that was a great setup for me because I'm in a family business. I'm the second gen, and I grew up watching my dad lead, and he, just watching him, how he made decisions and how he did things. I just assumed that's kind of what was expected of me, and I don't know where, because I was the number 3 of 4 kids, but I was a point guard. And, there was a time where I think he taught us you had to work hard, family business. You had to work harder than everybody else who got paid less. But that was just expected. And I think people just over time started to turn to me and ask questions. I just naturally felt like, all right, well, I'm going to be somebody that was going to be relied on for answers. So I needed to really pay attention and learn to be a leader and paid a lot of attention to my dad. He taught me so much over the years, and he's just one of those tracks where you look back and just say, what a gift that was to learn. I mean, he's, this guy.
So we're joined by
Hey, Luke, welcome.
Thank you. My apologies to the panel for being behind us.
Our icebreaker,
He's leaning into it.
our icebreaker was everyone had to sing one verse from their favorite song. So if you could share yours, that would be really great.
Happy birthday.
So Luke Kircher, we'll give you a little introduction here. Thank you for joining us. He's been on stage. He's got to get back on stage and he has to jump out of here early. That's what's going on here at the Prosper Forum. But he is president and co-founder of Prosper Forum. It's been, great working with you and, doing the forum. Great year this year. Thanks for joining us. And this question that I just posed to everybody that they're answering, if you didn't hear it, is when did you realize you're a leader or you had to be a leader?
I appreciate and I love the question. I think that is an ongoing journey as well, though. So while I may be a leader, whether it's in the capacity of my family or within my circle of friends or my community, but even within my organization, it's not a finish line, right? The spectrum of leadership continues to expand. So there are certain areas, even within the role that I play as president and co-founder for Prosper, that I still recognize there are areas that I need to continue to grow in. And so I rely on those around me that are my, in my sphere of influence to help me sharpen those skills in different capacities, whether it's with team members, with culture, with finance, with both the hard and the soft skills side. And so when I look at it, and even listening to your story, with your family and the background and the opportunity, there's a lot of individuals that have the proficiency and the skill for the job or the profession, but it's all those intangibles that you don't necessarily get access to, right? So you look at, how did my dad, my brothers, my sister, my mom, whatever it was, how did they navigate some of these challenges in that personal sense. And the reality, and you see this all over the place, whether it's in professional sports or in Hollywood. Oh, I saw how my parents handled fame in Hollywood or whatever else, or I saw one of my parents become a professional athlete or whatever that is. It's the same thing for us in a certain sense, where, having the exposure and understanding a little bit more and the business acumen of it, you don't have to go to Harvard to get the MBA to know how to talk at the board meeting. You don't need to go to Harvard and get an MBA to go secure financing for your business and your organization. You just need somebody to give you a mentorship, a platform, give you a hand up that'll help guide you along the way so that you miss as many of those pitfalls as you can and you don't stumble.
It seems like you tease up the next question so beautifully here because, what we've set up this next question was really, how do you gentlemen, in your own capacity, pick out the next leaders from your teams? Because it's not always synonymous with the best performer is going to give you the best leader, right? Reggie, let's start with you.
Absolutely. So one of the things I really look at, first of all, leadership, most people who enter into that, they raise their hand to do it. So, and it goes back to that responsibility. So I look for people who are genuinely interested in wanting to do it. I look for people who are curious. They're asking the right questions, always wanting to learn more. I look for people who bring an energy to the room in terms of leadership. And then all the other qualities just naturally fall in place. Are they good communicators? Are they collaborative? Are they team players? Are they willing to take that risk and have the courage that other people won't have? This is someone that, in absence of myself as the leader, that I will feel very comfortable putting them in that leadership role. So it's a combination of those things. One, are they willing to raise their hand? Most of those people are willing to take that risk. Those who kind of sit in the background, that does not mean that they can't be the leader, but I'm looking for that person who's saying, hey, it's me. Hey, I want to be that woman. I want to be that guy. And then all those other qualities and characteristics that I outlined. So those are just a few of the things I look for.
And step one, though, there could be other reasons behind it. Might still not make a great video, right? So it's questions, Josh, like how would you every in the past on separate social fits or hand that?
Yeah. And so it's funny. My whole career, I accidentally got into the restaurant business in my 40s. That was my midlife crisis. Most guys get a mistress or a sports car, and I joined Shaquille O'Neal selling fried chicken sandwiches as a midlife crisis. I used to work for huge CPG companies, right? I've known Luke for 15 years, right? It's funny. I was always known as Josh brings in the most diverse teams, literally in every possible way. And I once had a vice president look at me and he goes, everyone gives you all this credit for diversity. Every person on your team is identical. And I said, explain. And they said, it's like you hire behind this ethos that's uniquely yours. And I said, all right, teach me as a leader. And they said, every single person that you bring into this team, whether it doesn't matter their skin color, their gender, their background, their geography, every single one of them, if they're not interested in leaving a legacy and leaving the jersey in a better place, you're not going to put them on the team no matter what their skill set is. You're just not going to do it. And if they're not more interested in the team than themselves, you're not going to bring them on the team. You're just not going to do it. And if they're not willing to celebrate wildly loudly, almost inappropriately loudly, and then have tough meetings behind the scenes, you're not going to bring them on the team. You're not going to do it. If they're not going to be accountable to the team, you're not going to do it. Anyone that makes an excuse, you're not going to put them on the team. And I realized that was actually my secret sauce. My secret sauce was we can take any person that had this collective ethos, of we win more as we, right? And I'm not interested in punching the clock. I'm interested in doing something that I'm truly proud of. It's rare that you have a year where you achieve 100% of your KPIs, right? There's always the one that's you miss. 3 times in my career, my team has hit 100% of their KPIs, and by a country mile. And I believe in stretching KPIs. And I bought every single one of them a championship hat and sweatshirt. We just won the Super Bowl. And then you'd see them wearing it like a proud badge because that piece of team. Still, the first one of these, when I was at Anheuser-Busch, I gave these out in 2014, and at least 4 times a year, I get a text message from someone from that team. Look what I wore today, right? Because that collectivity is so huge. So for me, it's not about raising your hand. It's, have you fulfilled this ethos? And I think so often we want for our career, we're like, hey, I want to be the next X, right? My career, my favorite business book was True North by Bill George. And he said, you know, you follow your compass, not your clock. And I always just followed the directionality of, if someone in senior leadership looked at me and said, we're putting you into this role because you're going to figure this out. And I've done crazy roles that had nothing to do with what I understood, including joining the restaurant industry and Anheuser-Busch. That belief in, hey, someone else sees something in me was so vital. And that's another piece of that ethos. So, you know, I think that's the key. It's being with people with a aligned purpose and vision.
So, same question to you. You're thinking about, you already have somebody, you love people on the team, you want your teams. How are you earmarking the next leaders that are coming out of that? What are some of the qualities you're looking for?
Well, our company, we have 4 restaurants in the top 100 restaurants in the country, independent restaurants. So we get busy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the team is what it's all about. We don't do well with the outliers that want to be the heroes. We want it to be about the team. And how do they handle themselves under pressure is critical.
Yeah.
And do they take great feedback? You know, we talk about straight talk and be able to talk, you know, directly and not make it personal, but be able to make it constructive and learn from that.
We're talking coachability.
Coachability, exactly. And for us, at the end of the day, they need accountability. They need to show that they're accountable. They need to be able to show that, because we don't believe, like, so I joke sometimes because I say some people who work underneath me, I report to them. We try to have a very, flat organization. So whoever has the expertise that day needs to step up, and we need to support that person. That's how the team's going to function. We have events that go on some days. We have buyouts some days. Other days it's just a la carte. And the teams need to be very flexible, and people need to fill those roles. And again, it's about the team. And we can't have people who it's all about them. It needs to be. And being a family business, we pride ourselves on being part of the family. That kind of goes into the culture of what we do. And it shows. I think there's kind of a culture within that people somewhat self-select out. They just say, okay, this is not for me. And that's good. They can go be successful somewhere else. But if they want to win, it's going to be a team win. And it's all about the team.
And so the whole panel here on the same subject, right? Do your organizations have a independent leadership track when you're finding these folks you're putting on this track, or how do you usually do that? I know you work about a number of businesses, right? How do you earmark those people, or what's earmark them? Are you putting them on a special leadership track when you start getting more resources and time for that, or how's that work?
Yeah. So I've had it both ways in my career. You put on a dedicated leadership track where here's the dedicated things we need to get done. But then there's others, like in every organization, there's those weird miscellaneous tasks that don't actually fit someone's job description, right? It's like, who the hell's going to do this, right? And it's, if you believe in stretching a person, the answer is always that person, right? Because that person, that's their opportunity to figure it out. One of my favorite stories, earlier in my career, I ran global shopper marketing for Anheuser-Busch. I've shared this story with Luke, and it's my first major project in this role. I'm new to the organization, and I know, like, this project is either going to get me promoted into these huge positions or it's going to get me fired, right? And I had to interview 20 agencies, and I had to pick an agency who was going to be my agency to do this marketing work. And I get it down to 2 agencies, and I'm literally sweating because one I love for all these reasons and one I love for all these reasons. And I said to my boss, hey, I'm new. I'm 30 days in. I'm torn to these 2 agencies. I like this one for these reasons, this one for these reasons. Which one would you pick? And he looks me dead in the face and goes, if I have to do for you, I don't need you. And I'm like, So I pick an agency and end up selling in this platform to 23 countries around the world. And he takes me out for dinner that night and he goes, "Hey, just so you know, I would have picked the other one. And here's why." And I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me this?" And he goes, "Because then you wouldn't have owned it. Because we trusted you for this project with the knowing that if you did it well, you'd become a senior leader. So I knew, heard you. I knew you weren't thinking about this wrong. I knew either pathway would be okay. Why should you lead to my preference? You had to lead to your preference, and you did a great job." A week later, I was promoted to run the restaurant channel for Anheuser-Busch, right? So that story stuck with me, and it's really how I now view people as they develop, right? If I have to do for you, I don't need you, but I'm offering you the opportunity because I trust you're going to make the right decision, even if it's not the decision I would have made for myself. I'm here.
Yep.
I'm, yeah, I mean, I took over the restaurant vertical at Anheuser-Busch. I got to meet Shaquille O'Neal as part of that experience. And
For the record, being on the Zaller Law Pod webinar is the highlight.
I mean,
Career.
that was what was in my mind back in the day.
Yeah, so as a senior executive HR leader, I'm very intentional about how we think about leadership, and we do put people on a particular track. And there's so many things that go into doing that. So one, the most important thing is you hire right. It always starts with talent acquisition, and you can pretty much, if you have a good strategy in place to interview, and it is the difference between the art and the science as an art, to really being able to do that skillfully. But once you get them in the door, it's an onboarding process. Then there's a goal setting process. Then there's a performance review process. Then through the performance review process, there's a talent assessment process. Then from the talent assessment process, there's a succession planning process. And then through the succession planning process and doing the performance reviews, you start to try to identify your high potential leaders. And then whoever your high potential leaders are, you typically want to create an individual development plan for them in terms of how they want to get there. So it is a track and a process to do that. And again, there's this whole thing called 9-box, where you start to put people low potential, high performance, low performance, high potential, and assess people through that process. So there is a track that you want to put people on, but it starts with hiring first, onboarding properly, and then developing them, giving them opportunities, providing coaching, providing mentorship, giving them cross-functional opportunities, and testing to see what they can do. I think you mentioned it. Some people, they may self-select out, and because you have a person who's high potential, one period, they may not be, that high potential may not always be there. So
fickle, right?
it's something you have to assess over a certain period of time. And if you are doing it properly, like they say, the cream rises to the top. Again, some people want that pressure. They want those opportunities. They want the advancement, and you have to develop that. I'm a product of that. I've always wanted that smoke. I've always wanted that person, wanted to be that guy who got the challenges to show that I can deliver. But those are some of the ways we try to identify and develop leaders to be the next leaders in the organization.
When done right, 9-box is phenomenal. When done wrong, 9-box is a threat to the organization, right?
Yep.
Because if 9-box is being set solely by the department head and not by the full leadership of the organization, the number of times I've taken over a team where it's these 3 people are low potential, low performance, and within 18 months they're promoted, they weren't responding to their boss, or their boss wasn't utilizing them the right way, or they were in the wrong role. It's one of the reasons, like, I will never come into an organization and just start terminating people, right? Because at the end of the day, it's how do they respond to the new leadership in place? So much of our performance is predicated on the following of the leader above them, right? And are the KPIs set, the actual KPIs you in the organization that you want to hit? They're not always. So I agree with you. 9-box is critically important, but it has to be deployed right and with the right number of people counterbalancing and providing 360-degree feedback.
So I just want to make one more comment, and this is where I really plug HR.
Boom.
I agree with everything he's saying. This is why it's so critical that HR is running that process, and your HR leaders know how to run that process. So for me, I worked at some great organizations like GE, Pepsi, Nestle, where this was ingrained into me very early on how to do talent identification. And his point is 100% valid. If that 9 box is not done properly, it could be detrimental for the organization. But this is where the HR team also is making sure they're sitting with their business leaders, their frontline managers, making sure they're asking the right questions, making sure goals are very tight. They're smart goals, not read a book, but it's a very specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely goal that says, hey, if I do this, I'm going to achieve XYZ. There's some strong measurables behind that. If that exists, if that's present, your 9 box should work. 100%.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle on this a little bit. I 100% agree with the messaging around this. But for the employee side of it, if I am the employee that is looking to stretch, we talked about self-selecting out. Absolutely. But why are they self-selecting out? Is it because I only identify with 70% of that job description, so I don't think I have the right opportunity or the skill set? Sometimes we miss so much of that great talent. And depending on the size of the organization, that filters out quite substantially as well. And I also segregate and separate a little bit between, what type of position is this? Are we talking an entry level, early career? Are we talking mid-career or more senior level? But depending on for those individuals that are looking for growth and development, if you have the aspiration for it, don't self-select out purely because of the job description. Have those conversations with the HR, with the chief people officer, with the roles, and see, hey, I'm very interested in this for personal growth or for whatever that opportunity may present itself as. But at the same time, here's where I see maybe I have some opportunities where I need to expand my experience or exposure.
And to your point, leadership and title are very different things.
Yes.
Right? One of the best leaders I ever worked with in my career never achieved past national account manager. Not that he couldn't do it, he didn't want to do it. He wanted to be able to coach his kids' little league and do all those things. But when he was in the room and he spoke, everyone stopped and listened. And it didn't matter if it was the CEO of the company or an entry-level person. That's how irreverent he was in the culture. You can lead from any box in the org chart.
Luke, I just want to make one comment, and this is us being transparent. Leadership is not for everybody. Everybody, they think they want it, and they get into that role regardless of what level, and it's sometimes more than what they thought it was. So leadership is a progressive thing. It is a ongoing developmental thing. Like you said yourself, you're still developing as a leader. You're still learning new things. But to me, it's those who are persistent, those who are willing to stay with it, those who have the courage, those who fine with taking risk. There's so much that goes into this leadership thing. So I agree with you. I would not want anybody who really wants to be a leader to self-select out. I've made many mistakes, but the reason I think I'm a good leader is because I learned from those mistakes and I had more opportunities to recover from those. I didn't self-select out. I was willing to take the smoke and I kept going. So I agree. What is the job? What is it that we're really asking you to do? But understand leadership is an ongoing progressive thing.
Well, and fortunately with Prosper and our accelerator campaign, we provide access for those best-in-class emerging leaders to see what it's like to be in that C-suite role or function at that senior level position. And the beauty is that, sometimes we aspire for financial or for personal growth or for whatever else that may mean, but we don't necessarily understand at the moment what the sacrifice is or the implications that it may have to other parts of our lives. And so we've actually had a number of accelerators who are spectacular individuals and leaders. They have the attitude, the aptitude, the drive. But when you look at how does that balance in the prioritization of my life, the answer may be, I want that, but the answer may be just not right now. And so what I've seen with some of those individuals is if you don't do that little self-reflective piece or bring your spouse into that conversation or whatever else, then all of a sudden you go down this road where you're put in, and personally you may have the drive. But how does that manifest itself on the other side? You know, do you burn out? Do you get frustrated? Are you trying to balance all these things? And now it's, you know, my health is struggling, or as a parent, how am I doing? Or my relationship with my spouse or my faith or whatever else that may be. And that's where we've got to, before you jump into some of that, you may absolutely be an incredible leader in that role, but is now the right time to do it?
One of the things that I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and I love the idea of start with why. And it feels like part of this is, you know, you said how and what the circumstances are, but you probably want to drill into why they want to be a leader. And it shouldn't be to be in charge, right? That's probably the biggest red flag ever if you're trying to pick out the next leader. And so it sets up the stage beautifully for the next question, which is, now we're talking about people outside the organization that you're looking to bring in. What are the interview questions that are your great ones that say, you know what, this picked it up. This found that real why that wasn't, I want to be in charge. What's a great interview question or interview questions you like to use, John, to pull out who's the good leader in the pack?
Yeah, for us, because of the challenges of working in the environment, for us, and we're very entrepreneurial. My dad created a very entrepreneurial culture with the growth of our business. And I remember I was putting together like a manual on something, and he's like, get rid of that manual. Just give me a great person. And just, you know, and so he was old school.
Right.
And some of that carries over, and the people have to make decisions. We have to see them make decisions. So asking them questions about where they've had challenges in a team environment, things didn't go right. What did they do? You know, how did they dealt with, feedback, either from a guest or from their team members that they didn't like? You know, share that with us. Tell us how you dealt with that. And really taking them through kind of real world experiences. Depending on the level of the person, we'll have them actually work a shift and pay attention. Are they setting an example out there? Are they kind of standing back? We're very hands-on, so we look for that. And if they're kind of want to work from the background, that's not kind of who we are. You know, so those are some of the things that we look for.
It also feels like today with the advent of, I'm going to say it, AI, ChatGPT, people can really coach themselves on these questions. And it sounds like anecdotal answers is probably one of the better ways to go and have them walk through that experience.
So I've been told I'm a horrible interview because I don't ask questions. No, and I'm serious. I don't ask questions because canned questions get canned answers, right? So I just like to get people talking. And I once did an interview where after 50 minutes, the person said, hey, our hour's almost up. Don't you want to ask me anything? And I said, these are the things I now know about you. And I went down the whole list. And he goes, well, damn. I'm like, what questions do you have for me? Right? I don't want people that could answer canned questions. I want people that could do the job. Now, that said, I had a boss that used to love to have the craziest interview questions of all time, and no one knew where he was going with them. And his favorite interview question, we were interviewing people right out of college in 2016 election. And his question was, who will win the presidential election? Right? And you would get all these people who would be like, it's going to be Hillary because blah, 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 blah. It's going to be Trump because of blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the interview panel, he would say, just so you know, there's a right answer to the question. And they go, well, what's the right answer? And he would say, based on the current polls, so-and-so is predicted to win the election. And he didn't care if you knew the numbers. He didn't even care if you knew who was winning in the polls. All he was looking for with the question was, will you give me an analytical answer, or are you going to base it solely off your gut, right? And your opinion, right? Or will you try to present to me some form of fact? You've been way off, as long as it was some sort of fact. So he found asking questions that were designed to actually answer something very different than what was being asked was the best way to get at it. But I don't ask interview questions. I just get people talking, and we see where the conversation goes, and I'll steer it in one direction or another if I'm trying to solve for a vector.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sitting back. I'm not talking. I'm just taking all this in. It's gold. Really insightful. But and to go back to your earlier point, Josh, the second time it's come up during the forum. Yesterday, Christine, the CEO of Dutch Brothers, was talking, and she said, really, our decisions are 50-50 at the CEO level. And what I took from that, she was 50-50 whether you're right or wrong, going back to your earlier point. And are you, which marketing agency are you going to choose? It's a 50-50 call. And if you make the call, you disagreed with your boss, but it still turned out to be right. And it's whether you can make that call. And you spoke about this last year too, with your experience in the Army, how your general during training call, and this was stuck with me from last year, called you out because they did a fake ambush on your platoon. You froze, and he said, "What was wrong?" Do you want to share that story?
Yeah, so that stuck with me for life. And it was really came down to, from a leadership standpoint, it doesn't make a difference, Lieutenant Stover, if you make the right decision or the wrong decision. In this particular instance, what's most important is that you make a decision. I failed to do that. And in a real situation, I would have got the whole company killed. So that stayed with me for a very, very long time. And it's about being decisive, which is another quality of leadership. And one of the things you want to look for in identifying leaders: do they have good judgment? Do they make good decisions? It's a good thing, it's a difference between making good decisions and being decisive. Those are two different things. I do want to address the question as well about interview questions. And I'm going to share this one with everyone here. So think about this. One of my favorite questions to ask everyone I interview is, what is one misconception that others have about you? I let them think about that for a second. Now, think about the question, everybody in the room. How are you going to answer that question? Right? Because what are misconceptions? Not looking for an answer here. What are misconceptions? That one question can tell me a lot about a person. Now, I want to go back to what Josh said. He said a lot of great things. For me, I'm not even interested in general what the answer is to the questions that I ask you. What I'm more interested in is how you answer the questions. I am really looking for people and leaders who are thinkers, people who analyze things. They think about it. I love the question that you brought up. So really, an interview is about the conversation, right? And I don't ask canned questions either. So I agree with you. It's about the dialogue. It's about the conversation. It's about me getting to know you. The other question that I use, that I start off every interview with, is I say, hey, Huck, I just met you. We are getting ready to get on the elevator together. We're going to the 10th floor. Tell me about yourself in 2 minutes before we get to the 10th floor. Yes. How they answer that question is very important. You find out if they're verbose, if they're disciplined to stick to the 2 or 3 minutes. Are they thoughtful about who they are? So really, I ask multiple questions, but just those 2 questions are very, very important for me to ask in the interview.
I want to go to the 50-50 point that Anthony made real fast. Perry Rogers, Shaquille's agent, he has all these great little quotes. And one of my favorite of his is, you can be 100% right and still not be right. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because you can make a decision that's the absolute right thing to do today, but it's not in 6 months. Or you can make the absolute right decision today, but it tarnishes someone's view of you, which may hurt you later on. Or you can make so it's beyond that 50-50. Even when you nail it, you still may not have nailed it. And that means if you're a continuous improvement leader, you're always being somewhat reflective on, did I get out of that decision what I needed to get out of it? How can I make small pivots? How can I make small tweaks?
Can I add a little bit to actually, each of you have made comments around this. You know, you had mentioned about inviting them maybe to join a shift, and you had mentioned about your experience in the military and your responsiveness on that. And Josh, even to that point, sometimes the interview, and we talk about this all the time in life, communication's more than just what's coming out of your mouth. 80% of what you're communicating is actually not coming out of your mouth. And so when I look at the types of conversations and the questions, a couple of things is I'm looking a lot more of what are the types of things I'm trying to solve for? Is this a assessment of your intellectual capability? Because there's a lot of other easier ways to find that piece out. Is this an assessment of your emotional intelligence? Is this an assessment of your empathy, your caring, compassion, whatever else it may be? So I've even had some interviews where I'm not the one asking the question. I'm looking for the other communication coming from you. And so how do I be more holistic in other ways that, because what's coming out of earlier, you were talking about canned questions. What's coming out of your mouth is my rehearsed response to a specific answer. I jokingly say, some CEOs are professional answer givers because they've had so much practice at responding to questions. But when you catch somebody in that off sense, when you catch somebody and you're looking for other ways that they're communicating to you about their levels of confidence, about how they interact, their levels of respect, etc., there's a whole lot more that you can also extract from those opportunities. You just have to give yourself the space to be paying attention to that.
My favorite CEO shared with me that one of the best places to interview, I'm curious what your thoughts are, is in a restaurant. Invite somebody to have their interview with you because you watch them, how they treat the wait staff, how they treat their spouse if they're at dinner. And you pick up other cues about who they are as a person that they wouldn't get in the canned question. You guys do that too?
I thought I was your favorite CEO.
Well, I didn't work for you yet. But what's your thought on that? Is that a useful technique?
I'll jump in here. I won't say it's not a useful technique. It's just not my favorite technique. If I could, my technique would be to literally go on a walk with a person and have a conversation with them, which I've done that before. We've taken candidates on tours of our manufacturing facility. And in the process of taking them on the tour, they're giving the tour, but I'm actually interviewing them.
Yeah.
I'm seeing what questions they ask. How are they interacting with our people on the front line? Are they engaged in asking questions? Are they curious?
Yeah.
One of the things I pointed out. I picked this up from a time that I actually went on an interview with a guy who became my mentor. And he said, hey, let's go get some ice cream. And we went and got some ice cream. He was asking me all these kind of questions that I thought made no sense in terms of the job that I was looking for. What he was really, and I found this out later, what he was really looking for and assessing me on was my values. How did I grow up? Where did I grow up? What type of hunger did I have? What type of interest did I have in the things we were walking around talking about? Same guy ended up becoming so close to me. He's my son's godfather. But again, it's about the conversation. And the number one thing I tell, again, all candidates, first of all, if we didn't think you were qualified, you wouldn't even be talking to me right now.
Yep.
Because you have demonstrated to everyone else that, you know what, Reggie, the chief people officer, this person we need you to talk to. So if they made it to talk to me, they're qualified for the job. Not someone has already assessed that. I'm good with that.
Good.
So I want to know all the other stuff, right? I want to know all the other stuff. And again, I gave you 2 questions. I'm gonna give you one more. So I'm talking and I say, hey, Josh, I've looked over your resume. Man, very impressive. Josh, what's not on your resume that you want to talk to me about? Tell me what's not on your resume that you can tell me about Josh. Again, people start thinking about that. Just like canned questions.
Yeah.
And, not when you get to a certain level, you're not going to see many bad resumes. Trust me, I know there's some bad resumes out there, but typically you get to the manager, director, senior director, VP and up, resume should be good. So talk to me about what I don't see on your resume.
Smart. That's very smart. What about you, John?
I love going out to dinner with because it's the person who's not in the room, the spouse, their partner. They play such a big role in our world, restaurant world. There's so many hours that we're fighting over that person, and if they don't understand the why of why we do it, and they're not bought in, then we can't be successful with that leader. And I mean, we found sometimes we want to hire the spouse after meeting the spouse because you're like, wow, that person is dynamic, but we know where it comes from. That makes it a little awkward.
Yeah.
But I love taking them out to dinner. Right? Yeah.
I actually had a question for the panel here. Have you ever had the experience of allowing them to pick where the interview happens?
Ooh.
Because so often we do it and it's kind of on in our office, in our warehouse, on our turf. Allowing them also is an interesting way, and usually there's multiple steps to the interview process. But I'm just curious if any of you had any experience with that, because I may start weaving that into my program too.
Have you done it?
I have not. I mean, not specifically or intentionally, but
I think you decided to throw it into the universe.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, we were just, well, you know, as a leader, you should feel confident to make the call regardless of what we think. Yeah. Like I said, I've known Luke 15 years. So yeah. I've done it a couple times actually, where it's, hey, I'm in town. Let's meet up in person instead. Where do you want to meet? Normally it's, let's meet at this coffee shop, right? Because it's kind of safe bet. So you're not necessarily going to get the profoundness that you may be wanting. I've done the walk. The walk is great because you get people thinking they're not being interviewed and they just start talking. Once you reach, you know, you have screeners early on in the interview process. They're taking out the people you don't want. By the time it gets up to our level, you really need the person you're interviewing to feel like they're on our side of the desk, not across the desk, right? They're with us already. Yeah. It's your job to lose because I can't waste 10 hours a week interviewing people and if it's your job to lose and it's more of like a confirmation for you to lose, I need to treat you a little bit like you're already one of us.
I'm going to be very transparent. No, I don't give them the opportunity to choose where they're going to have the interview. I think the business has the right to run the business. And this is one of the ways where we run the business by saying, hey, we're going to interview here or there. But one thing I really don't like doing is interviewing candidates in my office. Again, like what Josh is saying, by the time they get to a certain level, you want to make them feel like you're one of us and it's your job to lose. Well, I get out of my office. I walk around the facility. We might go to lunch, or we might just have a casual conversation in one of our boardrooms that's much bigger, and the person can sit anywhere they want in the boardroom. As a matter of fact, I usually like for them to be in the boardroom or wherever, and then I just walk in. That gives me the opportunity to introduce myself and get them standing up and ask them how was their trip here and all that kind of stuff. And then I go into the interview. So the thing I would like is not to have it in my office, but not necessarily say, hey, you pick the place unless, like you said, Josh said, I'm going to be in New York, Chicago, whatever, and you pick a place. But that rarely happens. They typically are coming into our organization and we're having the interview someplace within our facility.
Reggie,
I'm learning something every day.
If you found them sitting at the head of the board table when they came in, does that say something about who they are? Are you assessing for where that seat they picked?
No, I'm probably a little different. I talked to Anthony last year about this book called The 4 Agreements. And one of the 4 agreements is don't make assumptions, right? So I don't look at it if they sit at the head of the table or they sit on the side of the table. I don't. But however, again, as a leader, if I go in to meet them, I never sit at the head of the table. I sit on the side. Occasionally, I'll sit right down beside them, right?
That's where I was saying.
Yeah, I sit right next to them and try to establish rapport, make them feel comfortable, or I'll sit on the other side of the desk. But no, I never looked at it that way.
And I know you have to run to our programming here at the forum. So I appreciate you stopping in really quick, Luke. And we'll talk about the Accelerate conference coming up in October. I'll finish up the webinar here today on that. But I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for coming late and leaving early.
Thank you. Do you want a mic to drop?
First, I really appreciate being a part of this, and trust me when I say this. I couldn't be more honored to be in this room and a part of this this incredible leadership. Thank you for letting me contribute and participate in any capacity. And I ran over here, and my apologies. 'Cause I literally ran. But to your point, Anthony, just to all of your community that and those of you that are joining us live here, we'd welcome on behalf of Zaller Law. We'll extend that invitation code and that discount code for you for that are joining us for today's webinar for that Accelerate conference in December at the Omni, or excuse me, in October at the Omni. Thank you, in Dallas, right? But please make sure to share that with this group. We'd be honored to have them with us.
And by the way, that just shows that you can make a mistake and still be a good leader. Luke, preaching, teaching.
Yeah. Thank you, Luke.
Luke Kircher, everybody.
Good luck. One really quick point too, about this question. I just finished the book actually on the plane here by Rory Sutherland. He's a marketing, actually coming from the marketing side. He's VP in Ogilvy in the UK, big ad agency. But he said in Britain in World War II, he'll relate to this, your dad being a bomber pilot. They couldn't figure out the interview questions on who would be a good fighter pilot during the war. But they ran a bunch of different questions, and it turned out to be 2 questions. One, have you ever owned a dirt bike? And the second question is, do you still own the dirt bike? And they said if they answered yes to the first one and no to the second one, they're a great fighter pilot. So yes, they're brave enough to have a dirt bike, but then once they're on a dirt bike, they realized it was too dangerous and they're going to get hurt, so they gave it up. And yeah, so but to all of your points, though, we're not hiring for this. And I don't say a fighter pilot's a commodity skill, but it is very like logical, technical. If your opponent does this, you need to do this, and like very learned, logical. But we're not hiring for those positions. And it's not this yes, no question that is going to prove if they're going to be a good leader. It's the ethos that you're picking up on, the character that you're picking up on. The values of family, how they're going to do and how they're going to evolve. And I've always, in the logical side of me, always been like, yeah, what's that trick question I can ask and figure out if they're going to be good in this organization? But the older I get, I realize there is no trick, and it's the person overall in this ethos that you're talking about. Yep.
There is no magic question.
Right. So, Reggie, you've actually inspired the next question here, which you'll know this in military battlefield promotions, right? And of all the industries, I think restaurants do it the most. We promote from within, we develop our people, we get them up to leadership. And so not every operator is a great leader, right? Or great operator is a great leader. So what are some of the learnings you had along the way, and for all of you, on some of the challenges you've had doing battlefield promotions, or if promoting somebody that look great, but then you realize that how they communicate or whatever those things are when they interact with the rest of the team, that might have been a miss. What are some of the challenges there?
Man, that's a tricky one, because you see potential leaders like myself. I always like to use myself as an example, make mistakes. And what kind of mistake was it? How did it impact either the organization, the people you were leading, you're in front of? Did it cost us money? Those are the questions that come to mind when I think about making mistakes. But here's what I would say. You have to give every leader some grace. I wouldn't be here if someone didn't give me some grace to be able to make mistakes and overcome those mistakes. But if I had to really nail down one of the biggest opportunities or mistakes we can make as leaders is, I believe, a failure to not properly communicate. And if I see a leader, or if a leader is not communicating, disseminating information properly, how can you then reasonably expect someone to be able to execute and deliver what you need them to deliver? So to answer your question, there's many out there, but I'm just going to choose one. I would say communication. It is the most critical skill that you must have if you are in a role of leadership, and definitely on the battlefield, on the basketball court, in a courtroom, can you effectively communicate?
Yeah.
That is correct.
So for me, and if you haven't figured it out, I have no problem sharing my mistakes. Right. So I worked for the Clorox company early in my career, got my first national desk, and came very decorated out of the field. Won all sorts of sales incentives and led the country in growth and all these things. And I get to the national office, like, oh, one of these, and our head of supply chain pulls me aside and he goes, "Just so you know, every person in this office hates you."
Whoa.
First day. And I said, "Well, explain." And he said, "When you got this win with Stop and Shop over here," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was a good one." He goes, "You pissed off the entire supply chain organization because we didn't have enough time to properly fulfill that order. We had to make a crazy amount of change to that. And when you got that big win with Shaw's Grocery, oh yeah, that one. Yeah, you weren't fully on brand equity when you did that. And it really pissed off the marketing organization. We're all happy you're taking this national job, but you got to figure out the rest of this business." And for me, the key leadership lesson in that is you're going to promote people to a level where they're breathing in air they've never breathed before, right? When you go above store in the restaurant industry, they're not procuring product. They don't know what it's like working with those vendors. They've never talked with the digital agency. They've never really thought about what a paid social campaign is going to look like. They have to be trained. And the only way to truly train them is if you build a culture of mentorship where the entire leadership team recognizes we're taking a gamble on this person, elevating them above store, or we're taking a gamble on elevating them to a general manager. If this individual fails, it's because we all failed first and they failed second, right? It's amazing how those tough lessons early in your career, if they stick with you the right way, go a long way, right? So I had to teach myself in that role everything I can know about supply chain, and then everything I can know about marketing, and then everything I can know about the innovation process. When I went back out to the field 2 years later, running grocery for half the country, now I fully got it, and I was able to bring the entire organization forward. I probably wouldn't be a senior leader today if I didn't get that really tough feedback early on in my career because it was the right feedback for that moment.
Did you take it personally in that moment, or were you able to separate yourself?
No, actually, I took it personally, but not at what he said. I took it personally on my own actions because ignorance is not bliss, right? Even though we say ignorance is bliss, I never for a minute thought I was operating in a way that was bad for the organization. And the accolades came raining down from the head of sales for the company for everything we were doing. I never would have dawned on me, though, that I was hurting my cross-functional partners until I understood their business. And now it's amazing. Just recently, our head of franchising said, "Hey, we could sell a 1-unit deal in Mobile, Alabama." And I said, "No, you're not doing it." He says, "No, but we could get a franchisee." I said, "Yeah, but I don't have a supply chain there. We won't be able to market that store right. We won't be able to do those right things." And if it wasn't for this guy 20 years ago teaching me, it's not okay for sales to just go sell, right? I would have been like, "Dude, that's awesome. Go sell the store." Right. So it's really important that you take those major mentorship lessons and you roll them into your ethos. You don't deflect them because they're being shared with you, not to tear you down. They're being shared with you to build you up. 100%.
Want to go with another question, or what's our time here?
Yeah. I'm close to end here. One more minute. Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
Go with you on this.
Well, I was going to tell a little story that is on the other side of what happened to Josh is that we had a gentleman who's rejoined our company a few times. And when he came back the second time, he was coming in because he was going to take on one of our prominent stores. And 2 weeks into it, he made a huge bad decision. And we're all like, shoot, maybe we brought back, maybe he wasn't ready. And testament to him is he learned from that in a big way. And he'll tell a story how he wasn't listening to the local team, giving him feedback on what he was going to do. But he thought, hey, this was going to be a great decision. And he's learned from that. And he's our number 3 leader now in the whole company. And it was great to see where people do learn from mistakes. And I think from a leadership, we were like, ooh, man, did we pick the wrong guy? Well, let's see what happens. But sometimes we could be quick to already put him in a box and say, okay, ooh, we're going to keep him tightly wound. But he learned very quickly how to lead, how to get feedback from people, and he became a greater leader from that experience. So
It's a true statement that we have to allow people the opportunity to fail and give them grace to recover, right? Otherwise it's just too critical and we're not going to develop people. Yeah. All right. Anthony, you want to take us home?
Any other closing thoughts?
I want to just say thank you. I really enjoyed being on this panel. Just listening to the many different thoughts of each one of these leaders, again, helps me to think about how I do things and decisions I make as a leader, especially when it comes to identifying other leaders. This is an ongoing thing. I certainly don't have all the answers. I know a few things, and I continue to pick up things from people like the gentleman on this panel. One of the biggest things you can do in terms of intentionally developing leaders is make sure you give them the proper exposure. If they could do the job and they have the right image, give them the right exposure. Make sure you're coaching them up right, you're mentoring them right, and putting them on a path to success, and make those adjustments.
First off, you know way more than a few things. Second off, the trait that's never really discussed when it comes to leadership, and I think it's one of the most important ones, is vulnerability. At the end of the day, the best thing you can do is be willing to say to your team, I am the problem, right? Because when you're saying I am the problem, that doesn't mean let's take you out back and shoot you, right? It means that you get that you also have the power to fix it, right? And acknowledging, and I need more than just myself, I need all of us working together to fix it, is so key. But vulnerability, people will follow vulnerability. People embrace vulnerability because they're facing the same insecurities we all are, right? And to acknowledge those insecurities and to beautify it versus repel it is so damn key if you're going to be a successful leader. And Anthony, thank you so much for having us here. It's great.
Thanks for being part of the panel. I learned so much. Thank you, Michael, for moderating and being involved. And I think most all of us are going to be at the Accelerate conference in October. So as Luke mentioned, everybody watching on the webinar could just email Jeremy Rogers or myself to get that discount code and learn more about Accelerate. It's really, this type of content is what's going to be present at Accelerate, and how functional areas, marketing, finance, leadership, HR, we have a lot of key executives like these gentlemen speaking to the group. So really appreciate your time. Thanks for taking this hour away from the forum and participating. And I'm going to watch this a few times, take notes. So thank you guys. Thanks everybody for listening in, and we'll see you next time.